to this. Okay, all right. Welcome everyone. I believe everyone else is going to be trickling in, but we'll just get started anyways. Just a little information about this. Of course, this is our very first online COVID forum for the year. Whoa, it's only January and it's just going to keep getting better. So eventually we want to move into in-person where we can collaborate and have a discussion about COVID-19. So of course, Zoom will do for now, but in the future we will plan more in-person things where we can see each other's faces and not just hide behind the screen. So this is our online COVID forum. So basically we will just have an open discussion. Of course, we are not all professionals here. We are all community health workers where we want to hear more information, more data. Of course, we're not experts, but we're experts in what we do to help the community. So I have invited our guests, Oretta, and sorry, this dog is like, this is like not the only room in here. Go. I wanted to invite Oretta and Jakey, and I will give them some time to introduce themselves, to explain what they do. Of course, both of them are heavily involved in COVID-19 response and helping our community members here. So I will give the floor to Oretta to introduce herself, and then I'll let Jakey introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Oretta Tupola, and I wear many hats here in Utah, working for the University of Utah, Utah Public Health Association, and then volunteering for a lot of CBOs and community organizations, really building the workforce of community health here in Utah. And I have been working a lot with CBOs and training their CHWs to work on the front line, and also educating our systems workers and others about who we are as CHWs, what our value is, and how we're our connection and our trust with communities can help in the work that they're doing by connecting community members to resources. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Oretta. Jakey, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jakey Ciolo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I work with PIK2AR, doing case management, and then alongside with the Utah Pride Center doing community healthcare work. But case management work currently is very dominated with COVID cases. And so case management is hand in hand with community healthcare work. Kind of just a little bit more in depth sometimes. But yeah, actively involved. I love doing outreach. I got started doing outreach with the homeless population 2 years ago. And so I tend to focus on that a lot during my week of work because they're so heavily impacted by COVID. And with so many I guess we can talk about that later, but anyways, yeah, that's me. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you, Jakey, for introducing yourself. Well, since this is such a small, small group, I would love the other few women to introduce themselves. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself and let the other two wonderful women on here introduce themselves, just so we can get used to collaborating and just get to know each other's background while we're learning about people. So of course, my name is Nisi. I also work with PIK2AR, and I've been with PIK2AR for about 6 years. A lot of movement, a lot of title changes within PIK2AR. So I would say I moved through all the programs, and as of now, I am a part of the admin team as well as the CHW team, project managing the CCP project, and also doing some other things on the side. So of course, it's wonderful, and I love doing this work because it's helping our community. And yeah, Dottie, you want to introduce yourself? Just general, what's your name? What do you do? And what do you want to learn within this forum?
Yeah, thanks, Nisi. And it was awesome meeting Oretta and Jakey. I just realized, Arta, I have two students with your last name, so that was pretty funny. We never know.
Probably
Small
related.
community, probably related somewhere. My name's Dottie. My students call me Miss Dottie. I'm in my third year of paraprofessional to teacher preparation program. So this is my last year to be a special education teacher. And with that, so many different COVID protocols, different ones from Utah State alone compared to other places. So it got me a bit confused. And then having to be I just moved to West Valley City and realizing that how it is for different family members in different parts. My family's from Sandy, so what they're going through is different from what I'm going through in this area, and it can be confusing. So I needed a lot of help on that. Thanks. Yes, to educators. For my experience has been really interesting where we were highly encouraged to be vaccinated. And in that it went to another path. But my wife, she's not vaccinated and she was a small business owner, but due to COVID, she decided to just retire from her hairstyling business. Hence my hair. I do not do this on my own. It changes a lot, but yeah, I'm glad that I have people here that I can listen to, and thankful for Susie. I've known her for many years and it's so good to be back in Utah. And I do have questions, and I'm glad that there's people here that have been in outreach. I've done homeless outreach as well. And just things that I want, my wife is concerned about, our home is concerned about sometimes. So I'm just grateful to be here and to have a forum to listen and learn.
Yes, thank you, Dottie, for joining in on with us, because it is a topic that needs to be discussed. And of course, all the media within our wonderful world is a bit deceiving. So it's just basically, we just try to listen to what's hopefully right. So of course, thank you. Hopefully we can bring some light to some of the questions you have. Brittany, do you want to introduce yourself? What do you do? And of course, you're one of our other CHWs. So yeah.
Sure. My name is Brittany, she, her pronouns. I also wear many hats. So I do CHW work with Jakey at the Pride Center through PIK2AR, or partner with PIK2AR. And then I also work in adult and youth programming at the Pride Center. I actually learned a fun fact about COVID today at the clinic. I moonlight at an urgent care on the weekends as well, since the scrubs. But one of the MAs I was working with today said that if you go to the USPS website, you can get home COVID tests like shipped to you for free, and you get like 4 of them and they're good for 6 months. I had no idea that was even a thing. So there's that. That was awesome. I don't really have a whole lot. Most of my background is in psychology and mental health, particularly with youth under 18. Yeah, that's about it.
Yes, thank you, Brittany, for joining us. I believe Keho just dropped from the Zoom meeting, but I'm pretty sure he'll join in later. But we'll just, jump into
Let
it.
me see.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
just commenting on what Brittany said about those 4 COVID tests.
Mhm.
So now insurance has to cover up to 8 at-home tests. So if you go to like Walgreens or any pharmacy to buy an at-home test, your insurance should cover it. If it doesn't cover it initially, they say to save your receipts to get like a reimbursement. But you can get up to 8 a month with your insurance, which is pretty cool.
Well, see, I did not know that. See, I've been like doing a lot of the background work, and I'm like, oh, wow, must be sitting in my email waiting for me to read. So
It like
yeah.
changes every day. So
Yeah. So, okay, I'm not the only one that's like not catching up with news, because I just, a lot going on with everything. And of course, we're all busy and we're just like, oh, that's going on. Like, oh, yeah, it just changed today. So, yeah. Okay, I see that Tolina just joined us. We will ask you to turn on your camera so we can see your beautiful face and introduce yourself. What do you do, and how is COVID for you? or how is this pandemic? I wouldn't say COVID because, yeah. Hello?
Talina.
You lost in Zoom land. Okay, there she is. Hello? Tolina, did you hear me? If you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, I will, until you get that worked out, I will just move it on to Lulu. Look like she just joined us. Lulu, we're going around the room and introducing ourselves since we just have a small group. So what do you do, and what are you a part of within the community, and what else you want to share with us?
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm on my phone.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Lulu Wolfgram. Currently transitioned into the director position for Empowered Living Services with PIK2AR. I also hybrid do youth coordination for our youth initiative within PIK2AR. Really hoping that in this conversation we can better understand, some of the needs and questions of the community in regards to COVID education and just understanding how we can help as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, of course, I think Tolina was having some connection issues. So she will join in when she gets connected to a different source to connect to Zoom. So we'll just jump into it. So before we get started with all the questions, I just wanted to share something with everyone based off this wonderful site. Of course, this is the main site as a CHW that you should know, coronavirus.utah.gov. And of course, this just has all the information about everything it needs to know about COVID-19. So as you can see, it reports different things with cases, testing, tests reported, and all these hospitalizations and deaths. Of course, this is as reported from January 28th, 2022, which is yesterday. Just like the most up-to-date information that you can get from our wonderful state of Utah. And this just basically explains how many COVID cases there were, how many people were tested, reported, hospitalization, and COVID-19. And of course, this is on a span of a lot of people, and we want to focus more on our community, which is the NHPI community and also our other ethnic minority communities. But as you can see with Salt Lake County, we are very high in cases and hospitalizations and deaths. So with that, let me look for the other tab. If this thing would go away. There it is, data. Yes, so of course, this page shows kind of things broken down into age groups and also gender. As you can see, the most infective cases that we have is between the ages of 25 and 44 years old. Sorry, I was lost by that. But yeah, it's just, you can see that these numbers are very disheartening because no matter how much outreach we do to our community, we still have a lot of work to do to help our community with these things because, of course, the Omicron variant is highly transmittable. So as you can see, here is our group here, and with the population of the state and the number of cases, we remain high in that area. And of course, with hospitalizations, it's not that great. And then also with deaths, it's just, of course, the highest that we can have. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Is there a way lower of an age than I thought? Oh, yeah, it's amazing when you see these statistics because it's always updating each day. And of course, it's not stopping, it just keeps going up. So I think as our work as community health workers and people that are advocating for our community, we try to educate, promote, and mainly be sure that our communities are safe. So of course, if you want to go to this site, it is, I will put it in the chat if I can find the chat. And you can just browse around it, and they have all the information where you can have testing, the risk factors, demographics, outbreaks, and where you can obtain some vaccines. Of course, we just had a COVID vaccine last week, and it was good. We plan to have more in the future. So if you have anyone that would like their vaccines, of course, we will let you guys know. I will stop sharing and just open it to the group if you guys have any questions, or with Oretta, what's your thoughts about these numbers?
I just wanted to say thanks to Dottie for bringing up all those things and those questions that you said you have. And I don't know anything about COVID, but I can tell you what we're seeing on the ground with a lot of working with a lot of community health workers, and also working with the system, trying to share with them why, and ask them why our numbers are so high and why are we impacted so much by this vaccine. They have a lot of questions for us about, why doesn't your community want to get vaccinated? And it's not as simple as, they just don't want to. There's so many different perspectives behind the vaccine, but most of it is based on the mistrust that everyone has with the systems and with the state and with medical systems, because of the information that they're seeing, and they're getting it from all over the place, and then because everyone, like you said, is dealing with the COVID in different ways and addressing it in different ways. People are like, well, how come we have to do this, but over there it's so different? And my family back home is always like, why do we see you all over the place and none of the people over there are wearing masks? And I'm like, well, Utah's pretty open, and we're not on lockdown anymore, whereas Hawaii's still going lockdown back and forth, back and forth. And so a lot of community members are like, wait, is this real or is this not real? Why is it so different? Why is the information always changing about vaccines and whether you should get it or not? Or now in Utah, they warned us when we went to CHWD on the Hill that nobody there would be wearing masks. And the CHWs are like, there's a mask mandate in Salt Lake City. And they said, but the state capital is exempt. And people are like, what? So when we went there to the Hill, we were all wearing masks, and all the legislators were walking around, no masks, not. But it was cool because some of them did go back to their room and come back with a mask on in respect of the CHWs that were wearing. And so it is confusing. There's so many different resources that are sharing different things that contradict them. And so our goal was, there's a national PI COVID response team as well that gathers every month, and they've been discussing all of these issues to go back to their communities and their states and let them know, what the best practices or message are we going to go back to tell our communities, so that it's very simple. Where's the one-stop shop that they're going to go to, so they can just get information that they want from one place instead of looking all over the place. And so there's been a lot of strategy around how we've been trying to approach this and best make our communities aware of what's going on with COVID. But again, like Jakey said, there's so many, it just updates and changes like every second, it seems like. And so we are trying to keep up as well. And then the last thing I'll share is that the biggest thing that has hit us through COVID has been the difficulty of our community to understand what isolation and quarantine means, especially in a cultural perspective where we don't know what that means. We are with people, community, family 24/7, whether we like it or not. And when they locked down and said no family, Pacific Islanders had a hard time, especially when there's like 10 of our families living in one house sometimes. And so when that came out, people were confused and they said, oh, we're only with family. Well, they were meaning like just your household, not like all of your 100 cousins and your aunties and uncles. So there was a lot of definition that we had to explain to community, and it was really hard. And so because of that isolation and quarantining for 2 years now, really, it has caused a lot of increase in awareness around mental health, depression, just all kinds of things that have led to also suicide, have led to even early death. I want to say, I don't have statistics around that, but I know that our elderly who have been isolated through this have shared with us that they're so lonely. Why can't people come and see me? How come I cannot visit with my grandchildren? So, you know, it impacted our community hard, especially because of our culture. And so all of us are just trying to work in the best way that we can to keep the socialization pieces alive, because that's who we are. And then teaching our communities, like we have family home evening now on Zoom because we can't all get together, but we've been having to think outside of the box in everything that we do, so that our community doesn't feel so alone. But yeah, so those are the things that I think have come up a lot for us or for me in dealing with COVID.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat, or once someone's done talking, feel free to ask them. But just running along the lines of what Areta said, that's why our cases remain high within our Pacific Islander population here in Utah. And of course, every state is different. Of course, if someone goes to Hawaii, it's more strict, but here it's more open. We had a group come in from California and they were like, wow, we can, be free and not wear masks. And I'm like, yeah, it's because, California just keeps getting COVID cases. And over here, it's just like, it just depends on like our political view that we have. Of course, they dropped the mandate here in the state of Utah. And of course, cases still remain high. So yeah, I think along with that, I wanted to dive more deeper into our Pacific Islander community and also our LGBT community, because as mentioned in one of our meetings that we had with the CCP grant, is that they don't have any statistics on the LGBT community. Of course, a lot of barriers come along with that, not reporting, not doing this, but it's just something that we need to discuss because they are a part of our community, Pacific Island LGBTQ, we have that. And of course, culture plays a role in that. So just having a discussion to where, how can we reach out more to our LGBT community, especially being Pacific Islander, about helping them get resources with COVID-19 and being educated, because Dottie mentioned that her wife is still deciding either to get are you looking at her? I see her shadow. Hey, you should be on this call too. Just kidding. Yeah, we are definitely here to basically be an open mind perspective where of course we have people within our organization that are still debating on getting their vaccine. So of course we have all of these thoughts, but this is where we have this safe space to talk about these thoughts. So does anyone have any questions or want to open the discussion up to where we can help our community, our LGBT community, and also our Pacific Islander community as well?
I think why there's not a lot of statistics on it too is you can't necessarily be like, do you identify as queer on all the COVID testing? And you could maybe, I feel like that maybe is crossing boundaries. But that's a lot of the reason why we don't have statistics for that particular community, right? Because there's no one asking, which makes it hard to see if they're getting resources they need, or if COVID numbers are higher or lower, or what the education needs to be, because there's really no basis for numbers to find that or figure that out unless people are self-reporting. So, that makes it difficult. Plus, on top of that, you have a lot of people who maybe do an at-home test and they test positive, or they're feeling sick, so they just quarantine. Like, they don't ever get tested. They just quarantine because they're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'll just quarantine for 5 days and then be done. So that kind of messes with the numbers a little bit too. So it's a little bit harder of a demographic to nail down just because it's not traditionally a part of like medical questioning, if that makes sense.
Right. It does make sense because most people just prefer not to say because it just saves them the trouble of getting more questions. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, going off of what Brittany said, I feel like I feel like it is possible to get the statistics on how COVID is impacting the LGBT community. I just feel like America's healthcare system is super racist and set in its old ways of like the gender binary. So like, you know, it asks if you're male or female. So like, why couldn't you ask someone if they're trans? Because and or non-binary because they don't identify as a male or female, but we're forcing them to click female. So I think there's a lot that plays into it, like maybe deeper roots of
Oh,
issues,
systemic
right?
stuff for
Yeah, no, so
sure.
like that's really why. But I'm like, it makes no sense to me why we don't have the statistics, and it's maybe, you know, it's like, why would we give the funding to that to get, you know, because we've always been underserved. And you know, we saw how like the AIDS pandemic was handled, and you know, that's when conservatives were wearing masks because they were scared of getting AIDS through gay people. And not only gay people can get AIDS, but we saw all of that, like all that misinformation with that pandemic, and then like how many people lost their lives because of transphobia, homophobia. So there's, yeah. So I would agree with you, Brittany, but yeah, I think it's like a deeper issue of systemic problems. That's really why we don't have statistics on, because you don't really see statistics on either about like homeless population or people that we can't get like on the census, including Polynesians.
Yeah.
You know, I think we only got, I'm pretty sure the statistics on how many Polynesians actually were in the census actually did it. So it's like harder to get those statistics for multiple reasons. But yeah, that was my soapbox. Sorry.
No, I absolutely agree. And it's a huge problem, and not just with the queer community, right? With minorities all over, it's an issue. And I think, I don't know, it's especially with the trans community in particular, and being in Utah, like being queer in Utah is being minority, being anything but a white male in Utah is hard. So I think that a lot of times, I don't know, people don't care enough to ask, and those are the people that need the resources the most, which sucks because there's no way to get to them, and there's no way for them to get to us, or if it is, it's really messy. So I don't know, it just makes it all so much harder.
No, literally, yeah. I guess another part that I forgot is, you know, trans people are still denied healthcare every day. And so like people in the queer community, I don't go to the doctor. I don't know the last time I've been to the doctor. One is because I don't have insurance. Two is because I wouldn't feel comfortable going to visit, you know, like a white, straight, cisgender man who doesn't understand like my sexuality, like my interactions, like all of the social things that are a part of who I am, and like what plays into healthcare. I mean, just 2 days ago, there was a trans person in Tooele who was denied from a healthcare center. And it's happening in Utah. It's happening all around us. And so, you know, that's another reason we don't have these statistics, is because and when it comes to like accessing COVID resources, is a lot of these queer communities won't feel comfortable going to health departments to get COVID information unless they're able to get it through, you know, maybe like a LGBT center or a resource center. Like we've seen it working with the PI community because they look like us, we look like them. And so they kind of trust us with that information. But yeah, I think it's been that issue forever of whether you be a minority or LGBT, it's like you've always been denied healthcare. And even today, there's still, I think in 2018, I think 25% of Pacific Islanders reported that they experienced racism in healthcare. You know, because people think we're just big and unhealthy and we eat crap and we just are overweight. And so there's so much, I could talk about it forever, but someone else go.
Yes. Oretta, I see you're unmuted. Do you have anything to share?
Oh, no, sorry, I just didn't mute myself, but I'm just agreeing with everything that they're sharing because, and again, it's underserved communities don't just like, this is one of the educations that we've been trying to do, especially here in Utah, is that when I go to represent as a community health worker, I'm not, they see me and they're like, oh, you're representing all the Polynesian people. And so I use underserved communities more than I do just Pacific Island, because and when I share with them, even when I did I don't know if you guys watched the hearing last week, but I even shared with them those underserved communities is LGBTQ, are disabled, our minority ethnic communities, all our rural communities, because we're all kind of facing the same battles, and it's sad that in 2022, we're still fighting these same injustices, these same, these same racist systems that are set up not to serve our communities. When we go in to do a lot of this education with systems and with health systems and their staff, they don't understand. And there's sometimes, gets to a point where you just feel like, okay, I could just keep talking all day long about how, what needs to change, but this person is not going to change. And so, I mean, I might like to throw that out here as well. Like, what do you do when that happens? And so it's taken us longer to advocate just for PI services here in Utah, because we've had to navigate through, who's for us, who's against us, what is this person's feeling around equity, what is this person's feelings around Medicaid, and because all of those things they associate with poor people, Black people, underserved communities. And so trying to educate on this in 2022 to me is just like, I don't know, I'm just like, how are we still here having these discussions? And I get so frustrated, but I'm so open to anyone just sharing their thoughts around how they're advocating for themselves, because that's what we're teaching community. As we're teaching systems, we're telling community members, do not forget about your self-worth and your self-value and who you are the way you are, because nobody else is going to advocate that for you. And so we're trying to empower our community members, whoever they are, wherever they're from, to really learn how to speak up. And like everything else we've learned, you got to learn how to play the game. So when you go out there, we're trying to educate people, like if they tell you this is how you respond. If they tell you this, it's your right to say no. And so when I talk to the systems, they're like, oh, doesn't everybody know that? Don't you get taught that in school? I was like, not in the school I went to. I'm from a very rural school in the island of Oahu, and we had to share books. We're still like copying books so that we can share the books in our schools. But yeah, there's so much education that needs to happen. And one of the things I try to encourage our community members is to stay strong in this fight, because it's not going to end with us, but for our kids and our future, that's who we're fighting for right now. Because right now, there needs to be a lot of education.
Right. Jake, you have your hand raised?
Oh yeah, I was kind of just going off of what Oretta said of kind of like what can we, or where can we go from here? Because like she was saying, it's been hard to like pass legislation that will or like policy that will impact BIPOC communities, because of like those trigger words like advocacy, or words that matter, but like the people on the Hill, they don't understand what that advocacy even looks like. And so I just like thinking of, maybe we really need to work on getting these representatives and legislators out in doing outreach with us, whether they're on the other side or whatever. But I think like they need to come and they need to see that half of our clients are going to multiple funerals a week, half of their families are getting evicted. half of their families are in the hospital. And then you add the shootings, you add the tsunami. And like, if they were actually like at our community events, if they went to any of these things, they would be able to like understand that. And so I don't know, I always forget about that part also, but that's just an idea of maybe what we could, like one of our next steps is getting those people in those positions of leadership and who, you know, represent us, getting them out into the community. And if they don't come out, then we get them out. But just an idea.
Right. Just going based off what Oretta and Jakey kind of shared. Of course, the people that are in leadership matter because they're representing our community. And of course, the CHW on the Hill, that's where we went to, you know, advocate for our district, because most of them don't know the people in the district. They're just working in an office. And of course, us being there, having that presence and them seeing us there, of course, kind of moved some strings in their heart, just to see, oh, because this one person, I think he's a senator, he asked, oh, what area are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Salt Lake area. He's like, oh, I run the Taylorsville and Kearns. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, now I know who's representing that area, so I will refer them to you because there's a lot going on in that area, especially if it's on the west side. So, and then just going back to what Jakey said with identifying our LGBT community on like the healthcare and just paper, and like what Brittany said, everything is black and white like in this world. But just moving forward, I would say like people are realizing that it's not just black and white, it's, you know, black, white mixed in with a little gray and, you know, a little rainbow colors. So we're definitely in a new generation where we want everyone to be heard, not just the black and white. You know, we have to have everyone share their opinions, because if they don't, we're going to have these people in leadership make these decisions for us. And we don't want that, because we're the one living in the community. They're not, they're just on the paper, on the books. So Oretta, you have your hand raised?
No, I was gonna add to what Jakey said and in answering my own question about what else we can do, because Jakey was talking about the community leadership, right? But that's one of the things that we're trying to engage our community members to understand how those people on the Hill impact our daily lives. If you're wondering why you don't have the nice playgrounds and sidewalks in your neighborhood, it's because you don't vote. When we're doing civic engagement, a lot of our communities like, oh, it wastes time. My voice doesn't count. My vote doesn't count, but it really does. And then we sit back and complain like, who's making all these rules and who's, doing all this stuff? And so I wanted to say to Dottie that one of the things that for me, because they're like, well, where do we start? The elder generation? Do we start in the middle? Do we start with our kids? And I have been changing a lot of my focus to the youth, because they're the ones going to be leading in the future. But if they don't start now learning how all of this stuff works, because I didn't learn until I went to college. But if they don't understand how this is all going to impact them, then they can't make the changes. And a lot of us sit back for most of our lives just doing our own thing, not understanding the importance of education. And for me, teachers are with our kids longer than our parents are with our kids. All day, teachers are with our kids. And I feel like they can have a really huge influence. But I also know there's a big, huge burden on our teachers because of, people are changing out of even that profession because they're just burnt out. There's so much being put on teachers. They don't want to pay them enough. And all of these things are impacting, but you guys see how it's all connected, right? And so I know that in school, my teachers were huge influences in my life. And some of them, like, we still talk to today. She's like on our Facebook page and she has a lot of influence on us. And so I want to do more things with the schools and the kids just to help them to understand that their involvement and their engagement, that the change is only going to come through them, that no one else is going to work on that change for them. And even their parents sometimes don't understand what they're going through now because our generations are so different. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that I really want to do more with the youth. So I'm glad Lulu's doing that, so I can jump in and help wherever I can.
Jakey, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going off again, kind of what Areta was saying about getting our community to understand how it impacts us daily. I think a lot of people don't understand that until you actually sit down or you like go through something. And a lot of times we think all of this federal government, who matters, who's the president, won't actually affect us really, you know? But yeah, Councilman Jake, he ran for city council because his wife wanted a park, and then he won, and then they got a park. And like one thing I've been trying to stress, I think all of us, since we work as advocates, and I think teachers are the like number one advocate in my eyes, because like everything I learned was from my teachers, and so and they, because they're working with the younger generation. But I think what Areta was saying is we need to be teaching our clients to advocate for themselves. And so like with a few of my DV clients who have felt comfortable telling their story like publicly, I've been like, let's form a letter, let's send it to your representative, or let's send it to the Domestic Violence Coalition, who has bills on the Hill for this session, and like let your senator know what is happening to you and your family, and like that is going to empower them and like help them also break the systems that are like holding us down. Because if we just keep advocating for people but don't actually fight to break the systems down, then it's just gonna continue. The only reason our jobs exist really right now is because they're all of these systemic issues. So yeah, I think teaching our clients and community members to advocate for themselves, not just us advocating for them, but really teaching them how to advocate for themselves and their families, and like that will really impact their daily life.
Yes, definitely. All great conversations. I wanted to pick on people within the crowd, of course, because I want to hear your perspective. So with Dottie, being a teacher, how has COVID and being a teacher and all these changes like every day affected you? And have you ever had any times where you were burnt out, where they don't pay you enough to do this and you're like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? And then you remember why you're doing it. So could you share a little bit to that?
Nisi, burnt out is the word for every group. Oh my gosh. Whew. Yes, that's there. It's evident. It's evident in just Pacific Islander community. It's evident so many different ways. But I already gathered so many ideas that I wanted to just quickly share on what everyone has shared. And I really like Oreta's the one-stop shop go-to. I think these ideas are developing in where like, how can I do this in my own daily life? Like, what can I be using? And in regards to being in the special ed department, I thought I'm taking notes. I'm a note taker, y'all. Okay, that's what I am. But then, Arta, you said learn how to play the game. There is a game in this, and sometimes I forget that I am in the game. And I like Jakey said, when you don't get to sit down and like see, when you don't have that sit down moment to realize what is impacting you, then you're just going to keep on going. So I need to get those implemented, not only for me, but if I do it, then the students just automatically start doing those things. Like then they see it. And I want to, Jakey, you said something like, let your senator know. Now I'm going to create a lesson plan on writing structure and send it to the senator. Like that's done. And it will be from students that have IEPs, the individualized education program. So with students that have IEPs, oh my gosh, their stories. The school that I'm a part of, 90% are Pacific Islanders. And it's 80%, like 80% are Pacific Islanders. So it's, the collaboration. Yeah, one of y'all said about collaborating with education, how you want to be part of the youth. And I'm not those decision makers, but I am a voice to the ears. Like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or something like that. But Tanisi, when you're talking about burnout is real, and I have been trying to figure out how to do that. But then again, what resources are we looking at? A lot of our Pacific Islander family, we look at social media. I try to ask my parents about it. Their conversations are interesting sometimes. So it's another generation aspect of what they were raised in. I'm the firstborn in the United States. So for my parents, they come back from a way that sometimes I don't understand what they're actually saying to me. They speak both Tongan and English, and sometimes it's a disconnect, and I try to have to work harder to understand them. So I figured out with burnt out, I had to have a close community of friends who've helped me. And one of my when I was younger, one of my aunties became a lawyer, and she said something to me that I was gunning for. She goes, if you go to grad school, you better be married, because that person is gonna support you through and through. You're gonna get some stuff done. And look, COVID happened, and I'm one of those statistics that got married. So having someone there that just is there to push you through is so needed. Mental health, like I think, yeah, one of y'all are talking about mental health. It is real. Oh my gosh, I want to focus in on that. That's hardcore. The only other person I know at the Pride Center who has a Polynesian background, I think she's in the counseling center, but this stuff I don't know. And I only came to this because of Susie. I couldn't see this anywhere else. We're all so separated sometimes. We subscribe to only a certain channel, and that's all we get. So we never get the other input. So being a teacher, yeah, I wasn't supposed to be a teacher. Honestly, it was the leadership. When I was in high school, there was someone that I really looked up to, and then she followed me. She helped me through undergrad, then she helped me through graduate school, then she became a director of an elementary school, then came to middle school, then came to high school. And when I came back, we connected again. And it was only because I trusted her. She's my aunt, like 6 times removed, but close in the Polynesian bloodline in that. And for me, it was just because all of my coworkers, almost every single one of them have a Hawaii background. So they've lived there, they've been to school there, and we keep so tight that we need to, because there's no one else that we can go to. I love being part of a school that everyone's Polynesian in a way, that that looks like me, and then I look like my students. And that helps me. I don't know how it works for the teachers, but that helps me so much because I need it. And if I don't have it, then who are we supposed to go back on? Just like Oris has said, having those people there to trust you, man, it's needed. So
Right.
thank you. I'm getting a lot of information right now.
Yes, thank you for, giving your feedback, and also just writing down notes, because we just internally write notes in our mind, right? But you're smart, so you write down notes where you can remember. All of our notes just get lost in our mind because we're all busy. But Jake, you have a question? Just
it was
turn
just
over
it
Laura to after.
was kind of like a comment of what Dottie said. Or a side note, what school do you teach at?
I'm at Mana Academy, so it's in
Okay.
West Valley.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, no, I was just gonna go off a little bit of what you said of like social media and what we subscribe to. I think like the biggest, it really, it started pre-2020 of like disinformation. And like I'm very progressive, and so that's what I follow, and I know that that's the only news that I see coming through. Like I'll see like a headline that I know is there to trigger me in some way. Like if you've ever watched I think it's something about social media experiment or something on Netflix, but it goes into that of like that algorithm, and like it's feeding us what will piss us off, what will like get us riled. And so like it's crazy because like my brother's husband, his brother is a cop, and we were like civil, but we were like looking at, we were like, we were showing each other like our social media feeds, and like I'm scrolling through his feed, and it's like, you know, like guns and anti-mask and all this stuff, and because that's what he subscribes to, and so he's not gonna see real COVID facts or COVID information. He's gonna see COVID information coming from like Joe Rogan and like the like people that they see and like identify with. So I thought that was important that we touched on that, because you know what we subscribe to, whatever we follow, will feed us, and we'll hear and see what we want to hear rather than what we should hear. And I think there, I mean, that's another part, is mistrust between underserved communities and government. Let's talk about Black Americans being tested on with vaccines and medical. And so like there's so much distrust already that it's like, how can we trust any of it? And then you add everything on top of it. And so that's why it's so important to like break the politics out of public health. But how do you do that? But yeah, I was just commenting on that. So.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Areta?
Yeah, I was gonna say that there is a pattern in a lot of discussions we've been having. The other night I was on Kava Talks with the parent, you know, a lot of the parents from West Valley and Rose Park and on that end, and then, you know, earlier that morning we were with the Hunter High School kids in the pop class, talking to them a little bit, and then we went to the Capitol, and almost every discussion, and even throughout my work, there's a pattern of this, the same feeling that Dottie brought up of disconnect, right? Disconnect from culture, disconnect from generations, disconnect from just understanding, being able to have empathy for each other, because there's so much disconnect. And so in this, we talk a lot about culture, and my whole approach to the work that I do, especially with Pacific Islanders, is to really try to build a solid foundation of culture within them, because that's who we are. And we found there's a lot of kids that shared with us in our groups that, you know, I want to go, because we were saying, you know, let's open up. And PIK2AR's big thing is to create safe spaces, because there's no place, like Dottie said, to go get these resources, or they don't know that these resources exist. And so our goal has been to create these safe spaces so we can find out what is the need, and share what resources are there to address those needs. But in every conversation, we're telling, you know, kids, we're telling parents, we want you to open up. We know that it's not part of the culture for you to talk about these things. We know that, you know, you're not supposed to answer back or question your elders when they tell you to do something. You just do what they say. We know that, but this is why we have to change. It doesn't mean that we change our culture. The culture stays the same, but the problem is the kids said, I don't even know our culture. I mean, what does that even mean? I don't even know what it means to be Pacific Island. I was born and raised here in Utah. And that's the disconnect we're seeing in a lot of these discussions with community members. Because of that disconnect, and us trying to work simultaneously on mental health, education, systems change, all of these things, people are just, that's where the burnout comes from. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that we talk about here, that Dottie brought up a concern about, is self-care. How do we implement self-care techniques or strategies or practices within our daily lives? And I'm not talking about self-care like, oh, this weekend I'm going to get a pedi and a mani and I'm going to go to the spa. No, I'm talking about everyday implementation of self-care, where if you are on a call like this and something triggers you, or you're in a conversation with someone that's, you know, you're not feeling it right now, it's okay to say, hold on a little bit, I need to step away for a little while and I'll be back. Because you owe that to yourself. It is going to burn you out even sooner than you think if you sit in these conversations and try to be, you know, for us, it's because we're trying to be respectful. We're trying to be like, you know, not interrupt you and let you speak. And we have to stand up for ourselves, again, self-advocate. So take that time every day to get away from the computer and walk outside, or, you know, go meditate somewhere in a quiet room if you can, eat lunch, because we forget to do that a lot of times. And so if we don't take care of ourselves, and one of the best things I love that Dottie said is that when we model that behavior, the people around us, they follow. And a lot of people will say, man, I don't know how you do this, and I don't do this by myself, but I feel like I have a very balanced, I try my best to balance my work and home life. And so you guys know on my social media, I post a lot of work stuff, but I also post a lot of family stuff because my kids and my grandkids remind me every day.
Oh no, you went on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, on mute.
No, that's all. I just want to say that balance is something that we have to find in our lives and in our lifestyles so that we don't get so burnt out. And that's the blessing I get out of COVID, is that it really made everybody sit back and sit still and really reflect on what is most important in life. And that's what I've gotten out of isolation and quarantine.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of things you have covered. Of course, I feel like this started in 2020, and I feel like it's just been a long year where this year will never end. So of course they're trying to come up with a thing with an endemic to, end this pandemic, but I don't know how that's going, but we'll just have them figure that out in the upper leadership. Brittany, you have a question?
Yeah, I kind of just want to spin off of what she said as far as like, I don't like generational toxicity.
I just gotta go to bed. No, we couldn't Skype tonight, but good night, girl.
Anyways,
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Who's my child?
No, this happens all over TikTok. These people jumping in.
I was like, can
calls.
we just like boot them into a waiting room or something?
Yeah, you
yeah,
should be
I'm
able
gonna-
to boot it out.
So go to like their thing and hit more, and then it should be like send to waiting room.
Well,
What the
thank you for
fuck?
your entertainment, because it was just very very awkward
I
seeing
don't
a
want to
man
be
eating
rude, but I was
chips.
like, who the hell's
I
friend
was
is
like,
that?
who is that just eating a bag of chips in front of everybody? Like, what is going
Yeah.
on?
He was eating it
Anyways,
aggressively,
what I
yeah.
was saying is that this like idea of like generational toxicity and trauma, it just runs so deep in a lot of minorities. And so there's that whole like silencing lots of communities because we feel like we can't talk or we can't share or we can't question and all those things. And so where do you feel safe, right? And I grew up in a very aggressively Catholic Hispanic family. I watched Encanto. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but I was extremely triggered, not expecting to be. And so it's like this idea of we need to teach our cultures that you can share. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you insubordinate. You can share how you're feeling. You can talk about why you're upset or ask for change or advocate for yourself, because that is such an important piece across the board for all of these people who aren't getting representation, aren't having a voice, that kind of thing. And so I don't know, I just have to say like that's a huge part of it. I agree. And I think starting with kids is probably the best option because I mean, a lot of us, if you're old like me, you know what I mean? It's hard to implement change in older generations, but if you start with kids who are learning and they're growing and they're figuring out how their environment works and how to set up different dynamics, then we can kind of mold them into a more accepting, a more like, we're not going to be quiet because it's not okay kind of thing. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. I feel like old, but thank you.
The work is making us old. Just kidding. Jakey, you have anything to add?
Yeah, two comments. The first one was kind of going off Aretta and Brittany about how, we have young Pacific Islanders who are like, I don't really even know what the culture is. I've felt that. One, I grew up separated from my Samoan culture due to divorce and growing up with my white mom. But I think it's important to realize also that like, a lot of that is like outside of like elders down to the younger people in our community. And it really is a systemic issue because we are being taught since we were born, and especially the older generations, that you have to fit in these white spaces. So like we're having to re-navigate how to like fit in and like appear to society. And so I think that's where like a lot of that like identity crisis comes in, because we've been told so long not to take up that space. But like Brittany was saying, is like you need to take that space because like you're entitled to it. And then the second comment, because I think it's super important, was Aretha said, you know, COVID kind of woke everybody up to realizing what is important. And, you know, it's horrible to say, but I think, you know, if COVID had not happened, we would have just been in even more of a shitstorm for like 10 years. And like what we're addressing right now, we would be addressing in like 10 years. You know, like people weren't able to go to football games or to movies or vacations. And so everyone had to watch George Floyd get murdered. Everyone had to watch, finally, like had to look at it without all of these other distractions. And like, so there, it's important to realize what has started because of COVID and like all of the social movements that are happening because of COVID. Because it really, I think it woke up the people that weren't quite awake yet. And they're like, you know, why are my people dying? Why do we not have PPE? Why do we not have masks? Or like, why are we getting forced to go to work and bring it home to our multi-generational families? So yeah, I think that was just an important thing that I always like to tie in with the pandemic, because that's super important.
Yeah, and then just to add to, before I pass it on to Britt, it's sad that we had to have a infectious disease brought a lot of things to light, mental health. And like you said, people literally are on their phones all the time, and it just affects the way that people think, because it's just, you know, fake news. Not all fake news, but it's just sad that we had to have this disease happen for us to realize that, oh, mental health is important. Now that everyone's stuck at home with, you know, their families and they're going crazy, that they need to focus on mental health. Because I read a lot of studies that said that, of course, since the lockdown, their mental health has declined. But before that, mental health was a problem, or we're just trying to find solutions to this problem. So, yeah. Britt, you have something to add?
It's one of my like soapbox pet peeves is that this just idea of, I don't know if it's negligence, I don't know if it's being naive, I don't know if it's privilege, probably all of the above, but just that like things don't matter until they affect you is very much the world that we're living in. Yeah, ignorance. Yeah, exactly. And working, I don't know, working in healthcare, working in mental health, just seeing all of it come from all those different angles, it's so frustrating to me. And it's something that we still deal with when it comes to like getting vaccinated or getting tested even, or quarantining or wearing your mask or whatever it is. It's like, until someone that I know is dying of COVID, I don't give a shit. And that's sad. It's like, because you said these problems existed prior to COVID. COVID just made people more aware of it, which is very upsetting, because these problems that have been happening for decades, like healthcare issues and mental health and teaching, education, the way we treat teachers in general has always been an issue, but it's been more of an issue in minorities. And so we don't care. We don't care. We can let them deal with their systemic racism because it doesn't affect us until it does. And then now it's a problem. So now let's talk about it, which is so frustrating to me, because everyone's acting like it's all brand new. Like none of this happened. It's all COVID's fault. It's like, no, you just became aware of it now. And that's so frustrating to me.
I also think like, yeah, well, just a thought that popped into my head is, you know, America, I feel like I only ever get news of COVID in like the United States. Like the only news I'm getting is like cases in the States. But like, and I feel like that is another misinformation, because it's a global pandemic. Everyone is getting the vaccine, everyone is going through the same thing, but like that news stream that I get, I never see anything how it's impacting other countries. And that could play a part of wanting us to believe that it's an American disease and that it came from China, all these wild things. But that's just a comment that popped in my head.
But I mean, to be fair, we have been like known to be a little slow on the uptake when it comes to gun control, when it comes to, you know what I mean? So it's been a little, I mean, it feels on brand for me that maybe we are the problem.
I mean,
because we are the problem
working,
a lot of the time. Like I saw, I don't know if it was like a TikTok or something that was talking about tax returns and how people in the US get so excited for their tax return at the end of the year. And it was someone representing a different country and they're like, right, but you made that money a year ago, and now you have to fill out paperwork to ask your government permission to get the money that you overpaid them. And you don't think that's weird? So it's just like, we get a very filtered view of reality. Yeah. And a lot of times it's either spectrumy, right? On one side, it's like, we are the worst and don't know how to get our stuff together. Or like, we're so much better than everybody else because we're the land of the free. And it's like, are we though? So I don't know. It feels a little biased, all of it.
Yeah, that's a conversation everybody's like having too about, having this debate about, your grandparents came here so you can have all these new experiences and and then we're here with all of these opportunities and wishing that we had what they've had back in the day, or or some of it at least. And so again, back to that balance, right, of things. But I feel like that's how the systems control us, is that they keep some of these information away from us and they keep us divided, and that keeps everybody in their place so that we can continue to run the way we run. And that's why I feel like, man, that's why I always say that this is a game, because I feel like we just got to keep learning. One of the reasons what pushed me to do a lot of this administrative work, because I didn't ever want to be where I am right now. I wanted to stay on the ground with community and just do that work. But I realized shortly that I couldn't do anything without the state, them saying, okay, approve, you can spend that money and do more outreach. I couldn't do it. And I was like, why are you making the decisions? You're not even over there with me at the community event. So then when I did have an opportunity, I became the COO at a health center and sat on the executive team, and the power I had to say, this money is going for this. Like, we are not going to take any money away from that program. This is not, every time we have cutbacks, it's the most important community programs that go first. They take away the money from the teachers, they take away the money from social services, that's where they take the money from. And being a part of that, after I got a taste of that, I was like, oh, I'm not going back. I'm going to just keep going. And we need more of us at the table to kind of guide and direct where that money goes. But even here, I see okay, maybe I wouldn't call it intimidation, but I see the fear sometimes of white people or white men or women, whoever's at the top, that they have when I'm sitting there not uncomfortable at the same table. And and everyone, I think I posted about this today, about people saying, you weren't uncomfortable? Those senators are powerhouses in the Senate. I was like, I don't know those white boys back there. I don't know them. I have no problem saying what I do because it's my truth. And so I want to empower our kids that way. My daughter used to get bullied a lot, and my kids a lot, because they're half Tongan, half Samoan. And they would always be told, like, choose, you Samoan or you Tongan, like choose one or the other. And I hope I have, but when we found out she was getting bullied, I've tried to empower them since high school to be proud of both. And when you go represent both of those sides of you well, because it's something to be proud about. And so my daughter, she's always been very heavy set. When she was in high school, felt so empowered that she did everything. She made it her thing. Like, everything the kids said she couldn't do, she did. She became a student body officer. She was a cheerleader, and she was very big. So a lot of kids, would say, like, what is she doing over there? But there were a lot of younger kids who came up to her and said, I can't believe you're a cheerleader. I want to be a cheerleader too. You know, these heavy-set girls who people were saying, you can't be a cheerleader, you're too big. And I'm proud of that, to see my daughters stand up for themselves and not be ashamed to be who they are. But our community, there's a lot of us who are getting lost in this. And so what I want is for like this space we've created to have like 100 people on this call so we can have these kinds of conversations. But every time there's like 4 or 5 of us doing this, you know, trying to make changes. And a lot of people are not, I learned that a lot of people are not open to new things, even though they want to change, they're not very open to it. And so let's just keep spreading the word and inviting more like-minded people to these spaces so that we can spread the word and spread the resources.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I know the expectation that the white man expects from a person of color is to just be quiet. And of course, when we talk, they're like, oh, they sound normal, just like me. And it just shocks them. And of course, it scares them. And yeah, it's just breaking those, barriers. Of course, your daughter is breaking all the barriers of becoming a cheerleader, especially being heavy set, because that's the normal. Like, you have to be skinny and petite to be thrown in the air and all those things. You don't have to. And that's what I like about our generation, like the generation of the people within that generation that is breaking these, stereotypes that I can be anything I want. Why do I have to listen to the white man's words? So, Jakey?
I agree 100%. Yeah, Areta, tell your daughter she's amazing. I mean, that's why, I always get so unhopeful or lose hope a lot with this country. But like, I know younger generations, my generation, are here to ruffle some feathers. And and it's just one person at a time. Like, so your daughter advocating for herself, and then that's going to trickle down to how many people? Hundreds of people in reality. But yeah, and then the other comment was, yeah, one of my biggest things that I hate to hear is, the system is broken, like we need to fix it. I'm like, no, the system is working perfectly. It was always meant to oppress us. And so like, but that's the mentality that a lot of community has. It's like, this system, yeah, it's crap, but like, let's vote in someone else. But really, it's like, how can we on a collective level tear down systems? And in reality, every big movement happens from the ground up. So like, even just this little forum we're doing, all of the outreach we're doing, that is a movement that's happening within this pandemic that is going to save lives. And then like also just empower our community in all, just like working on a grassroots level, which is what the system doesn't understand at all, because it never included everybody else. When the Constitution and all that stuff was written, Black people Black people counted as what, a 3/4 of a person or a fourth of a person when, things were being passed way back when in a room full of white people. And so, yeah, just doing this work and kind of what Areta was saying, I wish I was 100 people on this call, but like, we know 100 people. And so just like having these conversations, and like, I love being in these safe spaces where we all have similar views. I'm not saying your views are my views, but I feel like we all have the same desire to see our community thrive. So yeah, I think just if we continue doing this collective work, it's like how PIK2AR is collabing with the Pride Center. We've never really worked with them before. Maybe it's going to be rough a little bit here and there, but that's community work. But we have to collab with like every community and like build that solidarity within like each other, or else, because if it's not, if Polynesians don't have solidarity with the Black Utahns, like we're never going to see injustices like get justice. Like we all have to band together. So yeah, I just think collective outreach and on the ground work, like what we're doing, is the solution, honestly.
Yes, I love the conversation. I love all the things that we have talked about. Of course, we can talk forever, but of course, we only have 8 minutes left. So I wanted to take this time to, reflect on what we talked about and moving forward. How will we help our communities get resources out to them, and how we can, um, motivate people to get vaccinated, or just have a talk with someone about mental health, because of course we're all in mental health, and we want to help other people that are struggling with their mental health. So I just want to open it up with this last minutes that we have, just what you have learned from this forum and the takeaway from it, and then what will you do moving forward to help just even one person, your friend, your mom, just talk about COVID-19 and how the effects it has, because all the things that we talked about with like mental health, youth, teachers, policies is all the main thing that's connected to it is COVID-19. Like it brought all of these things to light and how we are being affected by it. So, Jakey, you want to share first?
Yes. What was the question exactly?
Yeah,
Just like
so
the
your takeaway,
overall.
yeah, the overall of this
Okay.
conversation, the takeaway, and then what you're gonna do moving forward from this forum.
Cool. Yeah, no, like I said, I love being in these spaces. I think, we all wear 1,000,005 hats, and like we're running 1,000,005 directions, and we are all doing work that maybe our passion isn't like that exact thing, but like it ties into our passion, or like, so we're all trying to like break down 1,000,000 systems at one time. So it's nice to come together and just like collectively brainstorm and like talk about like what we're feeling, like how is everyone doing during this pandemic that's been almost 3 years long. Yeah, right, yeah, 2022, so we're in its third, COVID part 3. It's a trilogy now. But yeah, I think takeout, I know, yeah, me and Brittany, we decided to meet like this week, and like just really trying to target how we can do more outreach specified to like the queer community. So like an idea that I thought was, getting resource kits, and I think specifically focused in like mental health and like support, because a lot of queer households don't have like family ties. Like if you were to get sick, you don't, some of these queer kids are kicked to the curb a lot of the times, especially in Utah. And so that's why they're getting evicted. They're more, LGBT people in Utah are more, have a higher percentage of becoming homeless and all these things. And so that's one goal that I'm going to do, is just specialize like outreach into the queer community, more focusing on like the mental health aspects, because I do know that a lot of the queer community is pro vaccines and pro, health. And so I don't think that is a big disconnect in the community, but I think like the social support and like the mental health aspect is what I'll focus on.
Yes, I love it. Thank you for sharing. All right, Dottie, do you want to share what your takeaway? Of course, you have all your notes, so I'm gonna give you a limit of 2 minutes to share. Just kidding. But also, your what are you gonna do to move forward from this conversation?
Well, yeah, I take notes. I guess it's just habit, but I like that what you said, Orita. It's people. We don't want to do new things, and I didn't want to do this. You should have seen me before I got onto the Zoom call. I had to take a breather. I was like, okay, new thing. Press click. So I've been working on trying to do something that scares me a little bit, and honestly, it's being new to an event, being new to anything, to an organization. And I had to think about why I did it. And I put all my trust in the person that I knew that invited me. So with that in there, I had to think, I have to be a person to be trustworthy for other people to help. So I can't be someone that just like, I forget what the term is, but like, I have to be just a trustworthy person. So I want to work on that. Like if I accidentally take something from the grocery store or something, I got to walk back and say, hey, I don't know what it is, but that's how I figured out why I took the risk of coming in anyways, type of deal. And being new sucks. I'm not. So when you said that people aren't don't want to do new things, yeah, I don't want to do new things, but I think that this felt worth it. I have notes to prove it. So thanks, Nisi. Susie, she's trustworthy. She has a big network. Yeah. So I just got to be a friend somehow and try to invite someone else with me. Be like, hey, find my friend or something. Making friends slowly. Yes.
Yeah,
We're on it.
her network is so big, and it's just like, of course we love her and our personalities like kind of reflect hers. So, we love meeting new people, even though it took you, the little breather to come in. So we thank you for joining us on this call. Brittany, do you want to share?
Yeah. I'd always kind of to like mirror what Jakey said. It's nice to be in a like-minded space. It feels good because I feel like a lot of times in Utah, you feel like you're one in a million, and there's not a lot of people that feel the same way that you do, or look the same way that you do, or share the same belief systems. And it can be very hard, and it can be very lonely, and it can be very draining. So having opportunities like this where you can see like, no, there are people who want the same things that you do, and who are actively trying to be that voice to help you carry the load, is important. And I think as far as like taking information from this and moving forward, I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that like, even if resources are available, they're not always accessible in a way where, like, I don't know how many times I've gone to the CDC website and I'm like, I don't know what they're trying to say to me. It's like a different language. I don't understand any of it. So not only just like giving people resources, but giving it to them in a way that they can actually understand it. Because how are we supposed to make a good judgment call for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, if we don't even understand the information? You know what I mean? That is another, I think, barrier that is meant to keep the systemic disgustingness happening, is like, oh, we'll give them the information, we'll provide it for them, we'll just do it in a way so that maybe they don't understand, or so that it's biased, or whatever it is. So I think taking those resources, putting them in a way that they can be transferable through various educations, various pay scales, various minorities, cultures, whatever it is, make it accessible for them so that they know and can make good judgment calls, I think is what's important across any community, and kind of what our job is.
Right. Thank you, Brittany. Of course, like you said, we have all these resources, but is it accessible to the community? Language is a barrier, transportation is a barrier, all of these things are a barrier. And people just assume like, oh, here you go, here's a piece of paper, but they don't know that person's situation where they don't have a car, they have to take tracks. So yeah, thank you for sharing on that and moving forward with this conversation. Tolina, do you want to share?
Sorry, sorry. It was I loved it. I'm so sorry. I'm just over here at the cemetery. Um, but it's true. There's boundaries and barriers that I feel like culturally we do need to fix and or change. Because I'm not sure if it's quite like picked up. But I loved. Sorry, I'm walking. Everything about this forum and everything that Loretta and Dottie and Jakey and Brittany and yourself are sharing. Like I really love it and appreciate it. And I'm excited to see the work that we can do and helping to raise awareness on things and help everybody. Sorry. But yes, thank you guys.
Yes, thank you, Tolina, for sharing. And then Oretta.
No, I'm so glad that I came. I was thinking when Nisi first asked me, I was like, what am I going to share up there? What do you want to, don't ask me any more questions. But I'm so glad that I came. What I love about going to meetings is that I always meet new people, but I always also learn new things. And one of the things that I learned is that I don't know what I don't know. So a lot of the things that you guys shared, I didn't think about until now. And now I'm trying to think like, okay, maybe that's a gap that in my work that I need to address more. Like one of the things that stood out for me is, Jakey, what you said about our queer youth, because the queer youth that I know, a lot of my daughter's friends, their parents have accepted them. I mean, in the beginning it was hard for them, but I mean, you know, after a while it came down to, you know, we accept you because we love you, and they're still with their parents. But I never thought about like other kids who they got kicked out, or they're not with their parents, and how they could end up homeless because of that and not having those resources. And that oh, that makes me so sad, now thinking about that. But so I'm glad that I'm here because I get to learn new things. And moving forward, I will just continue to not ask questions when I'm asked to participate, and just join in on conversations so that I can share and learn more. But yeah, thank you guys for being here.
No, it's always great learning from you. Of course, I've met Oretta when I first got here with my internship, and I was like, wow, you're doing this work. And I was like, man, I just want to like be more like her, but in a different way. Of course, we have the same objectives where we want to help communities and then, you know, eventually go back home and help our community. But yeah, it's always amazing to hear everyone's different perspective of how they're gonna move forward from this conversation. Um, what I got from this conversation is basically, of course, we can talk forever about these conversations, but it's never an end to all these conversations. Of course, we will keep going with these conversations because it's amazing that one thing leads to the other, and especially with the past events that happened over the couple weeks with Tonga and also the shooting and with our youth and just mental health, it just brings our community together and it just affects us as a whole. So I would love to continue this conversation. Of course, I want to announce that the next COVID forum will be in February 28th, most likely in person. If things change with COVID-19, it will probably be online, but you guys are always welcome to join in. I will send up a follow-up survey just to see if you guys have any lingering questions or topics that you guys want to talk more to on the next forum. But of course, keeping this conversation going. And this is not the only space that we have that talks about these kinds of topics. We have other spaces, of course, with our other organizations that have these talks, especially if it's around there's UPIK, and then there's other places that, you know, talk about these things in different minority groups. So of course, I would love to keep this going. And I wanted to thank everyone for being on here. And I'm sorry we went over like 5 minutes, but is there any lingering questions, thoughts that you guys want to share? Because it's just been a very powerful, you know, powerful forum that we had. Even though there's only 6 of us, we still got a lot of content out, and we had a lot of, you know, thoughts about all the things that we are talking about. So of course, you know, all of these things matter. So I will just have anyone speak to what they have with their last thoughts, and we will depart from there.
I have no thoughts, minus Dottie, you should send me your information so we can kiki and collab and do stuff.
Yes,
I took a
definitely.
photo, so thank you.
Mhm.
Old style.
Yes, and then I will definitely keep you in the loop because, you know, once you join in on one group, you're going to join in on all of our, you know, events and stuff that we would have. Because, you know, I bet Susie's been getting you out, trying to get you out to our community events and be a part of some of our programming. So, of course, I'm glad that you came and learned a lot. I hope you can, you know, educate your wife and, you know, help her understand that, you know, it's to stay safe, and, you know, COVID-19 is still out there and that it is affecting everyone in our community. Any more questions, thoughts before we depart? No? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I will send out some emails to the people that attended and also the follow-up form that we would have. So thank you, everyone, and I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your day.